Hey guys, the video is going to look a little different today. Most of the ones you've seen before are ones that I did well in advance, that I had lots of time to mess with. And I've actually changed plans slightly for this week. After looking at what you all managed to do last week at the end, I've made the decision that I need to go back over some of that material. I need to reteach some of it because it's clear that some of you aren't quite getting it. And that's fine. I think, as I said, in the instructions last time, this is very hard at first for a lot of students. Usually students get to the point where they can do it really well, but it does take a little time, and it's not at all unusual for students to struggle a little bit at first with this step. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back over a little bit. So we are talking about making claims in analysis. Previously, we were talking about making claims in argument. That's when you would be giving your own opinion about something. Here, we are reading a passage. So what are we doing? We are making a claim that the author of the passage is doing something to affect, I'm going to pretend this never happened, the audience of the passage. So our claim is going to be, here's what the author is doing and to affect the audience. In other words, we are explaining one way that the author attempted to manipulate the audience. That's all I'm looking for in the claim right now. And as I looked over what y'all turned in on Thursday and Friday of last week, there's a couple things we need to go over. First of all, right now, we are only talking about the claim. So right now, when I ask for a claim, there is no reason for you to be using words from the passage. We'll write more. In fact, what we're going to do at the end of this week is we're going to add more to this where we'll actually start putting in quotes. But right now, there's no reason for you to use words for the passage. Some of you, and I can't stress this enough, this is a huge mistake. Don't make this, and some of you did. Some of you had words from the passage in your claim, words that you just copied straight from the passage, entire phrases, 5 words in a row, 10 words in a row, that you didn't put quotation marks around. That is cheating. That is plagiarism. I'm not at all joking. When you get to college, that will get you kicked out of college. Never use words from the passage unless there are quote marks around them. If you do not put quotation marks around them, it is considered cheating. It may seem arbitrary. I'm letting you know this is how it works, and that's how you need to be aware of that. So don't copy words out of the passage. And even if you are going to use words from the passage and put quote marks around it, some of you, you use some words that, from the way you use it, I could tell you didn't know what it means. There's a couple parts of that passage, the Florence Kelly passage, that it's a little confusing what she means, or the language is a little old-fashioned, and I'm aware that some of you may not see it. And some of you chose to copy out sections of the passage that you clearly did not understand. And I have a really hard time understanding why you would go, oh, I'm going to use this when you're not even sure what it means. That's a really bad idea. Only use parts of the passage you understand, and if you are going to use words from the passage, there better be quotation marks around it. So with that in mind, I do want to point something out. This is what a complete paragraph might look like. I'm not going to read it all to you. I just want to point out it has a sentence of claim, that's blue, a sentence of evidence, that's green, and then all this commentary. This is what the final product will end up looking like, but we're not there right now. On Thursday and Friday of last week, all I was asking for was the claim, this blue part. So I was asking for one sentence. I wasn't asking for the evidence. You notice I do have a quote here, words from the passage. I do have the quotation marks around them, but those were, that's in the evidence section, and we're going to get to that at the end of this week. So for what I asked for last week and what I'm asking for today, all I'm asking for is the claim. So just this. We're going to go back later, and we are going to add, as you can see, a lot more. But because of this, there is really no reason in your claim for there to be words from the passage, for there to be quotes, because that's going to come later in the passage, or later in what you write. Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk here. When we make a claim, what do I want you to do? Because some of you were struggling about this, and some of you did get on Zoom or on Remind and contact me and had me walk you through it. And I saw some people who started with something really bad end up with something really good after they actually got help. But reading through, a lot of you were confused, didn't understand, and didn't get help. I'm going back over this, but please, if you're confused, pop on the Zoom, let me help you. So when I ask you for a claim for analysis, there are 3 things I need to see. You need to mention the author. You need to mention the thing the author does. That's the rhetorical choice. And mention how the audience and how it affects them. So when you mention the author, you can call them the author. You can say the author does blah, blah, blah. You can refer to them by last name. So for that passage, that would be Kelly. You can use first and last name. So you could say Florence Kelly. You can use an honorific in last name. Honorific would be like Mr. or Mrs. or President or Doctor or Professor or whatever's appropriate to the person you're talking about, right? So, you could talk about President Bush or so forth. But some of you chose to call Florence Kelly Florence, and that's a big no-no. We just don't do that. When you mention the thing the author does, some of you said, oh, she manipulates the audience, which is interesting because the question was, how does she manipulate the audience? And you say, she manipulates them. So you have to be a lot more specific about it. You have to say what she's actually doing. You have to actually describe the choice she makes, what she actually does, which means you need to mention a specific kind of thing the author does. So, for example, in the Florence Kelly speech, you could say she uses examples of children who are suffering, or you could say she talks about little girls working at night. You don't have to quote it, but you can just say that's what she does, but you have to be more specific. And again, as I said a minute ago, don't need a quote. You also need to mention the audience and how it affects them. You can call them the audience, or you can say who they actually are, the actual name of the organization she was talking to. But be careful that you actually mention the correct audience, because some of you did not, and that's problematic. Or some of you said we or us as if you and me were in the audience when neither of us were alive in 1905. Some of you said she was talking to men when she was talking to a group full of women. Some of you said she was talking to the American people when in fact she was talking to a specific group of women. You got to get that right. So here's an example. This would be a perfectly valid example, would have got you full points. Mention the author, Kelly, that's her last name. What she does, she uses examples of suffering children, okay? Mention the audience, to make her audience feel guilt. Put a period on the end of that, and boom. That's all I was really asking for. I was asking for 3 of those, but that there is all it is. The author, tell me who she is, tell me what she does, uses examples of suffering children. There's a lot of other things as well. Makes her audience feel guilt, boom, you're done. So I feel like this is fairly simple, but I do know that it is something that is unusual for you in the sense that most of you have not been asked to do this before. So let's go through it in a little more detail. Here are some examples these are ones that y'all turned in that are not good enough. And I haven't put your names on there because I'm not trying to shame anyone or I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I just want to point some things out. So these are ones that some of y'all did turn in that weren't there. So let's look at this first one. The author was able to influence the audience by manipulating them to enlist working men in order to free the children. Okay, first of all, enlist the working men in order to free the children. That's just copied out of the passage. I'm willing to bet that whoever wrote this one in does not know what this means because the way they used it doesn't make sense. Secondly, was able to influence the audience. How do you know that? You don't know for sure if they agreed with her or not after the speech, so you really don't know that. And it doesn't say, what did the author do? It doesn't say she used examples or she talked about this. There's no rhetorical choice here. That one's not going to work. And this is the same one again, so I'm going to pretend that never happened. All right. Florence Kelly wants the people of the United States. That's not her audience. To put stricter laws on the work hours for children working so they can have an education rest. Now, this is actually true. This sentence is 100% true. That is what she wants. That's her purpose. But it doesn't tell me a rhetorical choice the author made. The children work to get a source of income to help with food shortages. Like, all of this is true, but this is like a summary of the passage, and it mentions her purpose in the passage, but it doesn't mention the audience anywhere, and it doesn't tell me a choice she made, like she chose to talk about little girls, or she chose to describe how they were suffering. It doesn't say that at all. This is a summary, and that's never going to work for this. Last one here. Florence Kelly wrote to the National Women's Suffrage Association. Okay, I see the author. Correct. I see the audience. Correct. Interesting that you say wrote to, because this was a speech. She got up in front of them and talked. Interesting. In order to convince people to join her fight and help end cruel child labor practices. That is, again, true. But that is her purpose. What is missing here is, what did she do? What's her rhetorical choice? You mentioned 2 of the 3 things. You mentioned the author and the audience, and you got those right. And you are correct about her purpose. But this doesn't work for a claim here for what I'm trying to get you to write, because you haven't told me what she did. You haven't said something like, she talks about how the things the kids make were the ones the women are buying so they would feel guilty, or she talks about them suffering. You didn't bring up what she actually did in the passage. You gave me the purpose, but not the rhetorical choice. So let's look at some good ones. And just like the ones that here, all of these ones are ones that are really good that some of y'all turned in. In other words, some of you figured this out and you've got this down. And some of you, frankly, some of these are incredibly impressive. So if you're one of the ones who are struggling, look at this. These aren't examples that I came up with. These are examples other students came up with. Use this to help you see what we're trying to get you to. So first one, Kelly guilt shames women and mothers by going into detail about the rigorous work the children go through to knit their sweaters, make their shoes, etc., and ultimately ruin their childhood by being forced to work at such a young age in order to motivate them to fight against child labor. Now this one is longer than it has to be, but not necessarily in a bad way. I see the author, I see the audience, and especially this here is not quite right, but you know what? You've got the basic idea of women. She's talking to a group of women, so okay. I love this here. Guilt shames. That tells me what she's trying to do. But if you had just said guilt shames, I would have said, okay, but how? But you told me, right? Here's the rhetorical choice. Going into detail about the rigorous work their children go through. And then all these details here. That's what I mean about the rhetorical choice. Oh, she went into detail about how they had to work hard. Boom. So I see author, audience, rhetorical choice. Love it. Here's another good one. The author wrote this so that it can appeal to adults, especially mothers, by mentioning the cruel conditions children have to work in order, and there's your rhetorical choice, mentioning the cruel conditions children have to work in. That's what she did. She mentioned that. Author, appeal to adults. Not the best audience, but technically correct. They were adults. Okay. In order to make the audience feel guilt, knowing the products they used are being made by these children. So I think it'd be better. I don't especially love the audience part, but every other part of this is amazing. So if every other part's amazing, I can let you slip a little bit on one thing. So this one's really good. I love this one. Florence Kelly reminds the National Women's Association numerous times that the little girls would work while they sleep in order to appeal to the women's emotions, as some of them are mothers. What I like about this one here, she has the correct audience. The student who wrote this has the correct audience, but then she points something else out. Notice how she talks about little girls, and this is one thing some students picked up on. Both little girls and little boys were working in these factories, but Florence Kelly keeps talking about little girls because she's talking to women. And she talks about how little they were because since it's a group of women, some of them, some of them were going to be mothers. That's just how that works out. So, bringing up the fact that she brings it up because they're mothers is kind of clever as well. It shows that she's really thinking about who the audience is. And this one here is probably the best one I saw. This is probably the best single one I saw anyone turn in. Florence Kelly appeals to the suffragettes by mentioning that children go to the mills after their birthdays in order to make them feel compassion for the children. Compassion they could feel especially if they have children. Why I said this is probably the best one. It has this repeat word modifier, the thing I said you had to do to get 100. A lot of people have tried repeat word modifiers, and frankly, a lot of people are not doing great at them yet. This is a beautiful one. Author, audience, rhetorical choice, and then she went even deeper, talked more about the audience. This one's amazing. So some of you all are doing a really good job on this, but not enough of you, so I felt like I needed to go back over a little bit. All right, so continuing on here. Let me walk you through doing an example. So here is this is just part of the passage. It's towards the end. It says, no one in this room tonight can feel free from such participation. The children make our shoes in the shoe factories, they knit our stockings, our knitted underwear in the knitting factories. They spin and weave our cotton. Now she keeps saying our stuff. In other words, what she's saying to the women is, these children who are working so hard and suffering, the stuff they're making is the stuff we're buying. So which kind of like it's our fault. Like, they're working so hard so I can have nice stuff. Which kind of makes me, it makes me, if I'm the women there, so let me rephrase that. Kind of makes the audience feel guilty, like, oh wow, it's kind of our fault because we're the ones buying this stuff. So, start with the author, Florence Kelly. What does she do? Reminds the women that the children are, I can't type today, working to make things that they buy. That's not a quote, that's just what she does, so that the audience will feel responsible. I could say responsible, I could say guilt, I could say shame. Okay, boom, perfect. I have my author, I have the audience, and I have what Florence Kelly does, she reminds him about this. This is all I'm looking for. Now, later in the year, when I go to write a full paragraph, I will keep going. My next sentence will be evidence that has a quote about how she does that, and then I will talk about how that's supposed to affect him. Like, I'll go into a lot more detail, but for right now, I'm trying to keep it simple on y'all. I want just that claim. That's all I'm asking you to do. Let's do one more example together. And by together, I mean I'll do it and you watch, because, you know. All right, so again, a little bit later in the passage, we do not wish this. We prefer to have our work done by men and women, but we are almost powerless, not wholly powerless, however, our citizens who enjoy the right to petition. For myself, I should use this power in every possible way until the right to the ballot is granted. Interesting, nothing in this speech is about voting rights, but here at the end, she kind of says, hey, you know, I'm going to keep working until we get the right to vote, and then I'm going to vote for people who will help. Why do you suppose she brought up the right to vote? It's not what she's talking about. She's talking about child labor and child suffering. And hopefully you've already thought of the answer. Well, that's what her audience cares about, right? That's right. So I would say this. The author mentions voting rights. Author, what she does, rhetorical choice, in order to cause the audience, there's the audience, to pay more, I cannot type today, attention to her ideas. And I'm going to fix this one here, and boom. Again, now I have all three things. What did she do? She mentions voting rights. Who did it? The author. Here's the audience. She's trying to catch their attention. She knows that's something they care about, so she brings it up to grab their attention. Nice, simple sentence. That's all it is. Just needs to have those three things. The author does this. The author does this to make the audience this. Boom, the end. So, let's talk about what you need to do today after you've watched this video. The next step on Classroom is going to be a quizzes, and I want to be very clear. I want you to get a 100 on this quiz. And if you don't, keep trying until you do. If you get a 98, you do not get credit for it. You only get credit if it's 100. Let me tell you why I'm doing that in case that is confusing to some of you. When you take it, first of all, it will tell you if you got it right or wrong, and it'll even tell you why you got it right or wrong. So the idea is really, this isn't about proving that you already know, it's about learning. So you go through it, if you get them all right, good, you're done. If you got some wrong, you need to read why you got them wrong, go back and do them again to help it get stuck in your brain. If we were in a class, I would be calling on people, hey, I'd ask this question, if they got it right, good, if not, I'd explain it. But I can't do that in this setting, so this is sort of taking that place. You need to retake the quizzes until you get 100. Every question will tell you what the right answer is and why. So all you need to do is pay attention to that and go back and get it right. But I will only give you credit for it if you get a 100. This is a way of getting you to practice the skill until you get it perfectly right. Then we're going to do something called a collaborative reading. And you're going to have access to a file that looks like this. This is a speech that President George W. Bush gave the night of 9/11. So 2 airplanes flew into the World Trade Center. Many Americans died. It was a rather massive thing. And the President of the United States gets on TV and gives a speech. So the author, President Bush, the audience, in this case, is all Americans. The exigencies, there's a terrorist attack on American soil. And you can probably figure out what he's trying to do. He's trying to help Americans cope and sort of calm them down. Hey, we all need to come together, encourage them, because a lot of people were very scared and frightened, like what's going on. So what I'm going to have you do is read through this quickly. It's not very long. And you're looking to make claims. And here's how I'm going to have you do it. I want you to make one claim, just one, from anywhere in here. Find one thing the author's doing. So what you'll do is you'll go through, and the way I'm going to have you do it is with the comment feature on Google Drive, which I'm about to show you. So say I want to make a comment about this. I'll highlight it with my mouse. I'll just select it with my mouse, and then right here, add comment, and then I'll put a comment on the end. So I'll say something like, President Bush uses examples about whatever in order to make the audience feel whatever. And I'm just going to fill that in just like the ones from the previous video. But here's what's interesting. Here's what's unusual about this. So after you make that comment, the comment will be over here. And anyone who also opens the file will be able to see that comment. And everyone will be working everyone from this class period will be working in that file. So when you open it up, there's a very good chance there will already be a couple of comments. So you might see a comment about this, and then a comment about this, and another comment about this, and you'll see other people's comments over here. First of all, don't mess with their comments. Don't delete their comments. Don't approve them. Just read them. So this is giving you more examples so you can see what some of your classmates are coming up with. But then you want to go through and find something that somebody hasn't already said and add your own comment to this. And so by the end of the day, there should be like 30 different comments in here, 30 different claims for me to look at, and each one will have somebody's name by it, because you're going to be going through and adding a new one. And the reason I'm doing it this way is I want you to make your claim, obviously, but then I want you to read the other students' claims. And if you're the first one in the file, I want you to come back in 20 or 30 minutes after, do some of the next steps, but then come back and read some of the other claims, because I want you to be seeing as many examples as possible of these claims. And I'll be going through, and I might comment that some are good or bad. If I see one that's bad, I might remove it so it doesn't confuse other people and so forth. But again, all these claims should have the author, what the author is doing. He's using examples about this. He's using these kind of words. He's describing this, and how that's supposed to affect the audience, just like in the previous examples. After you do that, you're going to send me a remind message. Those directions will be on Classroom. And again, let me explain to you why I'm doing these remind messages. Most days I have you sending one in. This is in a real classroom. Like if we were face-to-face and we were all in the class together, I'd call on somebody, or maybe I'd say, everyone write down this answer and hold it up on a whiteboard or something like that. It's a way for me to check that y'all are actually getting it and understanding it. So you send me a message and I can reply back, oh yeah, approved, you got it, meaning good, you're ready to move on. And if it's not very good, if you've made a mistake or you've misunderstood something, I can reply right away with, oh, you're missing this, and so you can figure it out. So with that in mind, a couple of you over the last couple of days have sent in a remind message, and it wasn't quite right, like it wasn't good enough in some way. And I would reply back and tell you that. And some of you never replied. I don't know if you just didn't see my reply. I don't know if you had notifications turned off, but well then, that's the whole purpose of it. So after you send the message, you need to be watching for my reply. Hopefully I'll just say, hey, that's approved, go on. But I may tell you something you need to change or improve. And again, the whole point of me doing that is, if there's something you've misunderstood, I'm trying to make it as clear to you as possible. I'm trying to help you understand it before it's too late, before you get onto the thing that's graded. So definitely read the directions carefully on that remind message. And then finally, you're going to go back to week 4, day 2, step 4. That was what we did last week, where you made claims about the Florence Kelley speech. And you're going to go reread your claims, thinking about everything we've done now, thinking about everything you just heard me explain and the practices you've done. And you're going to make sure your claims are as good as they can be. If you already have a great grade on that, great. But if you don't, go ahead and resubmit it and have me regraded. You need for those 3 claims to be really good, because on Thursday and Friday, we're going to talk about adding evidence. And what I'm going to say to you is, take one of those claims and then add evidence to it. But if the claim isn't any good, there's no way for you to pass that assignment. So for the assignment on Thursday, Friday, you have to have good claims from week 4, day 2, step 4. So open that up, make sure all 3 claims are good. If you're not sure if they're good, I'll be on Zoom during the class period. I have remind. You know my email. Talk to me. Let me help you out. Okay? So I do want to stress the following things. Your claim has to have the author, the audience, and what the author is doing. You need to ask me for help if you are confused. And make sure week 4, day 2, step 4 is correct and good. 1, for your grade, but also because you need that to be able to get a good grade next class period. All right, that's it for this video. Go on to the next step.